Every morning, millions of British households do the same thing. They reach for the same jar, the same familiar red lid, the same brand they've known since childhood. It feels like comfort. It feels like routine. It feels like home. What it actually is a decision that may be quietly damaging your body in ways the label will never tell you. Because here's what the major coffee brands in this country don't want you to understand. The product in that jar, on that shelf, behind that reassuring logo, it has been reformulated, outsourced, chemically processed, and mass-produced to a degree that would shock the people who first trusted these names. And the regulatory frameworks designed to protect you, they have gaps wide enough to drive a lorry through. This isn't about being alarmist. This is about what the science actually says. This is about what the food agencies quietly acknowledge while the brands continue advertising to you. This is about the gap between what you believe you're consuming and what you are actually putting into your body every single day. 7 brands, 7 stories, and a system that profits from your ignorance. But before we get into it, I need you to do something. If this information is valuable to you, if you think people deserve to know what they're actually consuming every single day, click the like button right now. Subscribe and share this video with someone who deserves to know the truth. That one action does more than you think. It tells the algorithm this matters. It pushes this video to more people, and every single person who sees this is one more person who can make an informed choice about what they consume. Let's get into it. 1. Nescafé Original. Let's start with the most recognizable coffee jar in Britain. Nescafé Original. That red lid, that golden logo. There's a version of it in almost every office break room, every elderly parent's kitchen, every student flat in the country. It is, by sales volume, the most consumed coffee product in the United Kingdom, and it contains something that no one is talking about loud enough. Acrylamide, a chemical compound that forms naturally when starchy or carbohydrate-rich foods are subjected to very high heat, and that includes coffee beans during the roasting process. The darker the roast, in many cases, the higher the exposure. The European Food Safety Authority has classified acrylamide as a genotoxic carcinogen, meaning it has the potential to damage DNA and raise cancer risk. The IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, has listed it as a Group 2A substance, probably carcinogenic to humans. Nescafé Original is an intensely roasted, instant format product. Instant coffee, by its very production process, roasted, brewed at industrial scale, spray-dried at temperatures exceeding 150 degrees, concentrates what the bean produces under heat stress. Independent testing, published across multiple European consumer watchdog groups, has found that instant coffees, as a category, frequently carry higher acrylamide loads than fresh ground alternatives. The UK Food Standards Agency acknowledges acrylamide as a genuine dietary concern. They have issued public guidance telling consumers to reduce exposure. They have told the food industry to reduce acrylamide in its products. And yet Nescafé Original sits on every supermarket shelf with no warning, no disclosure, just that comforting red lid. You've been drinking this every day for years, so have your parents. The label doesn't tell you that. 2. Kenco Millicano. Kenco positions itself a step above the average instant coffee, Millicano. Whole bean instant. The marketing language is almost artisanal. Whole beans, finely milled, a more sophisticated experience. And people pay a premium for it. They believe they're getting something better. What they don't know is who actually makes it. Kenco is owned by Jacobs Douay Egberts, JDE, one of the largest coffee conglomerates on earth. JDE sources beans from supply chains spanning dozens of countries, operating under pressure to produce at volume, at speed, and at the lowest possible cost. And while the brand talks about Rainforest Alliance certification, what that certification actually guarantees in practice is frequently contested by NGOs and agricultural oversight bodies. A 2020 investigation by multiple European media outlets found that Rainforest Alliance certification in coffee supply chains did not consistently prevent the use of pesticides listed as highly hazardous by the WHO. Pesticide Action Network Europe has published research showing detectable residues of substances like chlorpyrifos, a neurotoxic organophosphate, in commercially sold coffee products, including brands operating under sustainability certification. You see the green frog on the packet. You feel reassured. You feel like you made a responsible choice. The frog is marketing. The chemical residues are real. 3. Maxwell House. Maxwell House is nostalgia in a tin. It has been sold in Britain for decades. There is a generation of people who associate its smell with their grandparents' kitchens, with Sunday mornings, with safety. That emotional architecture is not accidental. It is the product of decades of deliberate brand building, designed to make you feel that consuming this product is an act of loyalty to your own personal history. But here's the truth about Maxwell House in 2024. It is owned by a private equity-backed corporate group that acquired it from Kraft Heinz in a process designed to extract maximum value from a legacy name. The beans are sourced through commodity-grade supply chains. The roasting and blending processes are optimized not for taste or health, but for consistency and cost reduction. And the acrylamide problem that exists in Nescafé, it exists here too, compounded in the same industrial instant production format. The same spray-drying heat exposure, the same chemical consequences. But the tin has that warm brown color, that traditional font, that sense of heritage. You're not buying your grandmother's coffee. You're buying a financial instrument wrapped in her memory. The people who sold her that product no longer own it. The formula has changed. The sourcing has changed. The only thing that hasn't changed is the emotional hook and the fact that it keeps working on you. 4. Carte Noire. Carte Noire built an entire brand identity around seduction, French elegance, dark sophistication. That advertising campaign, all candlelight and slow piano, is one of the most psychologically sophisticated pieces of lifestyle marketing ever deployed for a coffee product. You weren't buying instant coffee. You were buying an identity, a feeling, a romanticized version of yourself. And buried beneath all of that is a product that, under independent testing, has repeatedly flagged for mycotoxins, specifically ochratoxin A, a mold-derived compound that forms on coffee beans during improper storage and transport in humid conditions. The European Commission has set maximum limits for ochratoxin A in roasted and instant coffee under EC Regulation 1881/2006. Multiple third-party lab analyses of instant and ground coffee products sold in the UK, conducted by consumer groups across Europe, have found ochratoxin A present in commercially available blends, sometimes approaching or exceeding those regulatory thresholds. Ochratoxin A is a nephrotoxin. It damages the kidneys. It is a potential human carcinogen. And it is an invisible passenger in poorly managed supply chains, which is precisely what high-volume, low-cost commercial coffee production tends to produce. The candles in the advert don't mention that. 5. Costa Coffee Retail. When Costa Coffee moved into the retail space, the bags, the pods, the cans, it did something very specific. It leveraged the trust people had built through years of visiting the shops. You liked the barista, you liked the atmosphere, you trusted the experience, and that trust transferred automatically to the retail product on the supermarket shelf. But the at-home range and the in-store experience are not the same product ecosystem. The retail range operates under commercial supply constraints, entirely different from the controlled environment of a trained barista. And when you look at the flavoured retail Costa products, the caramel lattes, the mocha tins, the ready-to-drink cans, the ingredient list begins to tell a different story. Sugars, modified starches, emulsifiers, acidity regulators. Natural flavourings, a term so legally elastic in UK and EU food law that it can include a vast array of synthetic processed derivatives as long as they originate from a natural source at some point in production. The term natural flavouring tells you almost nothing about what chemical compounds are actually present in the product. The British Heart Foundation and NHS guidance consistently flags high sugar daily beverages as a primary driver of metabolic dysfunction, type 2 diabetes risk, and cardiovascular disease. A single ready-to-drink Costa-flavoured coffee can contain between 15 and 25 grams of sugar. Consumed daily, that is a significant cumulative metabolic load delivered in packaging that presents itself as a premium coffee brand, not a confectionery product. You trusted the green logo. You trusted the name above the high street door. That trust is being monetized, and not always in your favor. 6. Douwe Egberts Pure Gold. Douwe Egberts is the quiet giant, less flashy than Nescafé, less emotionally manipulative than Carte Noire. It occupies a space in the British consumer psyche as the reliable, middle-class, sensible choice. Pure Gold. The name itself is a masterclass in brand positioning. Pure Gold. You are buying purity. You are buying value. The language does all the psychological work before a single granule hits your cup. And then there's what mycotoxin research says about the commodity-grade Arabica and Robusta blends that underpin products in this price tier. The coffee supply chain between equatorial growing regions and European processing facilities is long, slow, and exposed to temperature and humidity variation that creates ideal conditions for Aspergillus and Penicillium mold growth on green beans. The roasting process eliminates some but not all mycotoxin contamination because certain compounds are thermostable. They survive the heat. The Consumer Association in Germany, Stiftung Warentest, one of Europe's most rigorous independent testing organizations, has repeatedly published coffee analyses flagging mycotoxin and pesticide residue concerns across multiple mass-market instant brands in the JDE portfolio. JDE, as you now know, is the parent of both Kenco and Douwe Egberts. Same parent, same supply chain pressures, same potential exposure, two different brand identities designed to reach different segments of the market. That's not an oversight. That's a business model. 7. Café Hag Decaffeinated. And then there are the people who thought they were being responsible. They switched to decaf. They heard that too much caffeine was bad. They made a choice to protect their health. Café Hag, the UK's most recognised decaffeinated brand, has sold itself directly to that health instinct for over a century. Decaf. Safe. The sensible option. Here's what the packaging doesn't explain: how caffeine is removed. There are several decaffeination processes. The cleanest supercritical CO2 extraction uses pressurized carbon dioxide to selectively remove caffeine without leaving chemical residue. It is expensive. It is not the industry standard for mass-market decaf. The most widely used industrial methods involve solvent-based extraction, specifically methylene chloride, also known as dichloromethane or ethyl acetate. The FDA in the United States permits trace residues of methylene chloride in decaffeinated coffee at up to 10 parts per million. The UK FSA, operating under retained EU standards, maintains similar limits. Regulatory bodies argue that residual levels are safe. What they are less transparent about is that methylene chloride is classified by the IARC as a Group 2A probable human carcinogen. The US Environmental Protection Agency has listed it as a known animal carcinogen. Occupational exposure studies in workers regularly exposed to the compound have flagged associations with liver toxicity and central nervous system effects. You gave up caffeine because you cared about your body. You may have replaced it with trace amounts of a probable carcinogen. The label calls it decaffeinated. It does not tell you how, and most people never thought to ask. That is precisely how this system works. It answers the question you asked. It never volunteers the answer to the question you didn't know you needed to ask. So, what do you actually do with this? You stop assuming that a familiar logo equals a safe product. You start reading ingredient lists, not just the front of the pack, but the back. You look for decaffeination methods on the label. You prioritize organic certification from bodies with genuine third-party auditing, Soil Association, USDA, organic, because they carry pesticide restrictions that Rainforest Alliance alone does not guarantee. You choose fresh ground over instant where you can, because the spray drying process adds heat exposure and the solubility aids in many instant formulas introduce chemistry that brewed coffee does not. You ask why acrylamide warnings are mandatory in California's coffee shops under Proposition 65, but not in British supermarkets. You ask why the FSA has told the industry to reduce acrylamide for years, but has not made disclosure mandatory. You ask who sits on the advisory panels that set those regulatory thresholds, and whether the food industry has a seat at that table. Because it does. It always does. The brands on this list have not necessarily broken any laws. That is the most disturbing part. They operate within a system of standards and thresholds and permitted levels and legal definitions, all of which were set in an environment shaped, in part, by the industries they were designed to regulate. Legality is not the same as safety. Compliance is not the same as transparency. A permitted level of a probable carcinogen is still a probable carcinogen. Every single morning, you make a decision. You reach for a product and you trust that someone, somewhere, has made sure it's good for you. That trust is the most valuable thing the food industry possesses. It is worth billions of pounds per year, and it is maintained not by proving their products are safe, but by ensuring you never ask whether they are. You ask today. Now push this to someone who hasn't asked yet, because the only thing more powerful than a corporation's marketing budget is a population that has stopped believing it.